Talk 49.
Heinrich Thaler is a poet. Heinrich Thaler, welcome to Talk 49. Heinrich, you are a poet. When did you find poetry, Heinrich? When did you find it?
Poetry, not for myself, but for reading, I found it very early, nearly as a child. Later, during the Mittelschule, I found it, and then I always liked poetry, but also normal writings.
When did you start writing poetry?
I started writing poetry very late. Writing, I think I started 20 years ago.
Really, 20 years ago? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't start writing when I was younger, no, because I didn't dare to write or to bring it to paper. My thoughts to bring it to any paper. I had it always in my brain, I think, but I didn't dare to write it.
What was it that changed your thinking 20 years ago? All of a sudden you started putting your thoughts on paper. What happened to bring about this big change?
I thought that it would be a good idea. Now, it was another idea. It was that I discovered that I like to think in rhymes.
Really?
Yes. So I thought it's very easy to think in rhymes, and I did write it. I started to write it. My thoughts first in rhymes, and then I developed a system not to do it in rhymes, but to write down some short, mostly thoughts. This is only what I'm thinking. Not what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and the combination between thinking and feeling made out of this came the poetry.
So first of all, you wrote down just the thoughts as they came somehow.
Yes.
And then afterwards you turn it into poetry. Is this right?
Yes, and not only the thoughts, but also what I remembered, of course. It was mostly remembering of my youth and of my childhood, and out of this came, combined with dreams. Well, dreams are very important to me. Often I woke up in the night and I did write down some dreams. I always did remember my dreams because I'm dreaming nearly every night, and I remember dreams, and they come from different directions, of course. So I try to get up and write down what I just dreamed. You must always transform it into words. It's something different to have a dream and to transform it in words. But out of this came a lot of the poetry I've written.
What influences your dreams, Heinrich? Are these your everyday events? Are they books you read? What are the great influences in your life? What gives you these ideas?
Yeah, in the dreams it comes. I cannot influence it where the dreams come from, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, but mostly what I thought after I've worked a lot during my career at the hospital. It was 40 years at the hospital. Now I'm retired, but I worked 40 years at the hospital. And before working, I have studied. And before having studied, I was at a school, and I learned a lot. And I was always very, very zealous to learn many things. And many things I did not think about. But in the dreams, there came these things combined. It was mostly my youth where I came from. I come from the mountains, from Bad Gastein, which is a famous health resort, and I got many experiences there at this place, And I came to a boarding school very early, with 10 years. A boarding school away from at home. And this was very hard for me. And the dreams came also from these experiences at the school.
One half of your childhood must have been fantastic in the mountains.
Yeah.
So you've got great memories of these. And the other half of your childhood was in a boarding school.
It was in a boarding school. It was terrible, yes.
Why was it so terrible? Could you just tell us?
It was terrible for me because mostly because I was away from my parents. I was away from my parents, and this was a boarding school where they could visit me only once a month. And I have been separated from my parents for nearly suddenly separated.
That must have been very hard.
It was very hard because I was 10 years old at this time. And this is one of the hardest experiences, which I always, after studying and when I was working, I started to remember this slowly to work it out, to think about these things and to get along with what I have experienced.
So from out of this very black time in your life came poetry in a way. How does your poetry reflect this very black time in your life?
It was not permanently black, but it was mostly black. At the beginning it was very black. Then it was not so black because I got many very good friends, which are still now my friends. So it was, and it was, I must say, it was a very good school. It was not a Catholic school. It was nearly an anti-Catholic boarding school, but it existed in only at this school. It was Werkschulheim-Felbertal, a very famous school.
What's that again, Heinrich? What was that again? You said it so quickly, I didn't get it.
Werkschulheim. Werkschulheim-Felbertal.
So you had a happy life with your parents. The school, yes and no. Beginning was black, but it got better. How did the mountains influence your life?
Very much, because it was always a kind of I was scared by the mountains, but also very deeply attracted by the mountains, and it was always an ambivalent and ambiguous situation for me to be scared and to be attracted by all these things around the snow. Very much snow and high mountains, and living in a village which is surrounded by really high mountains. I've written many. My poetry books are mostly started. My first book was about this boarding school.
Could you read us one verse, maybe?
Ein Haus genannt das Klirf, an einem steilen Hang am Rande eines Waldes, umgeben nur von Kälte, steht ein Haus. Nie hat ein Mensch darin gewohnt und niemand weiß, zu welchem Zweck und wann man es gebaut hat. Es hat 3 oder 4 Geschosse und im obersten, unter dem Giebel eines stillen schwarzen Daches, führt eine Tür hinaus, direkt ins Nichts. These have been one of my impressions of my childhood, and the house is still existing. I remember.
Really? It's still there. Yeah.
It's still there. It's the same. And I was so impressed by this house because it was in the middle of the woods, and there was, as I have written, one door getting out with. Must have been planned a balcony, but it was no balcony. It was the door getting down directly this very steep woods, and this was very impressive. It's still impressive.
These are the ideas you get along the way. Do you are you always on lookout for ideas for your poems?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm still always looking out, observing people, how they talk to each other, or situations, for example, which when I have time I can look at situations, for example, when sitting in a cafe or anything like this, or words. Sometimes I find words which I think are interesting because I never know it, or combinations of words.
You love words, don't you? You love words.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, you craft words into poetry. Do you ever give readings?
I had these readings, yes, of course.
What are the names of these books, Heinrich? What are the names of these books?
I can show it to you.
Well, no, because we're on the radio, Heinrich.
Yeah, I will do it. Okay. The first book is, I found, first I tried to find a publisher, of course. It's very hard to find a publisher for poets.
Yeah.
Poetry is nearly, it's nearly impossible to publish because more people are writing poems than reading poems, you know.
Is that right? That was a question, Heinrich. Are there many people writing poetry these days?
Yes. I think there are a lot of people writing, but it's you must find how it is possible to write it that you don't only understand it by yourself, but also that other people could understand what you mean when writing this. That's a problem when you write poetry, because for themselves many people write poetry, poems, of course. The first book was Vergessene Landkarten.
Vergessene
Forgotten maps.
Forgotten map. Could you read one short poem from that, please, Heinrich, if it's no problem?
Gott. Ich habe Gott gesucht und ihn nicht gefunden. Dann habe ich zufällig eine Küchenlade geöffnet und ihn gefunden, den Schöpfer.
Wow, that is really, really good.
People like it very much because it's so short. And so.
It's a brilliant wordplay as well. A Schöpfer, for people who don't speak German, is a Suppenlöffel. It's a
ladle.
Yeah, a ladle, yeah. A ladle in German means a creator.
Schöpfer, the creator.
Yeah.
It's the same word, creator and ladle.
That's very, very good. Heinrich, one question: How can somebody learn to be a poet?
That's a question I can't answer really because I don't know. I have never looked how other people are writing poems.
Yeah.
And I never have been at a writing school or poetry school or anything like this. I never found it necessary because I have not been interested to get teaching about poetry, and because I think it must come out of myself and not be taught by anybody else.
You can't learn to be a poet. It's something you either are or you are not.
You cannot learn it, I think. No, it's impossible. It must come out of yourself. So many people are writing poems and they don't think about publishing because it's for myself. It's something like a therapy for you, for yourself.
Heinrich, are your books still available? Can one buy your books anywhere?
I think so. Yes, you can. I think you can find it in the Amazon. I think
Amazon, yeah. So
it must be available. I think I am not sure. I don't know exactly.
But we can
find it at the publisher because I found a publisher which was very difficult.
Good.
Publisher, and they published the first book and then the second and then the third book and then. Published, but it was not sold very much, of course.
Okay, but you're published and you're doing okay. What's the name of your next book, Heinrich?
The next book was about dreams.
Dreams.
It is called Träume, Götter, Lebewesen. Dreams, gods, and creatures.
To finish with, Heinrich, can you read us one very short verse from this book, please?
Der Rabe. Wenn es dir gelungen ist, dem schwarzen Raben, der in dir haust, ins Angesicht zu schauen, wenn es dir gelungen ist, deine Gier nach den Dingen und den Menschen, deine Lust, deinen Schmerz, deine Freude und deine Einsamkeit und auch den Hunger, den Durst und die Kälte in dir zu besiegen, dann bist du nicht erlöst, sondern tot.
Wow. Strong words, Heinrich. Heinrich, are you working on a new book? Is there going to be a new book in the future?
Yes, I'm working on it. The manuscript has been ready in January this year. It's about medicine. It's more getting joking about medicine, about the modern medicine, and it is the manuscript is ready, but my publisher told me it's useless to publish it because there are no readings now. There are no readings, and they think that they cannot. It's nearly impossible to show what we've published and to have any organizations or more possibilities to. So I will publish it as soon as possible. Maybe next year. It depends on the situation, of course.
One last question, Heinrich, if I may. Is there any better way of expressing your thoughts than poetry?
At the moment, I'm not so far. At the moment, it's still the best way to express my thoughts. But I'm sure I'm parallel. I'm writing now on a novel.
Oh, you're writing a novel? Wow! Very briefly, what's it about?
It's about. It's interesting. My uncle was he died 10 years ago, I think, and he wrote a book about the first month after the Second World War, when he tried to come along and he had to flee and he has written it very well in the situation in which he was, and I try to make a novel out of this. What he did write, he published it only in a short Eigenverlag for himself or for us. And I try to all the thoughts of a lost young man, for example. It's not about the war, but it's experience what he has experienced before. It was a terrible situation when he was 20 years old and after the war, and then how he tried to come along with all these traumas. That's what I'm trying to make out of this book.
We wish you luck with that, Heinrich. We look forward to maybe reading it when it comes out, which it will.
I hope it will. I just started it. I had the idea long enough in my brain, but now I started really to do it, and it's much more difficult to write a novel than to write poems.
Okay,
much more difficult.
But in a word, words will always be important for you.
Yes, always.
Brilliant.
Heinrich Thaler, thank you for talking to Talk 49.
Talk 49.